So I'm a Christian parent and I have 5 kids between the ages of 3 and 12. When I first heard about the Trump IRA accounts for kids, I was pretty excited about it. I thought this is a great idea. And then as that week went on, I started to have some doubts and some concerns. So I want to share those with you. I want to be looking at one of the positives that I think could come out of this, and also about 3 or 4 of the negatives that maybe Christian parents are not aware of and maybe potentially haven't thought of. Let me know if you've already kind of considered this and if you have a solution to it. But this is what they are for those that don't know. They're basically starter IRAs for minors. They're owned by the child, but they're managed by the adult, by the guardian, until the kid is 18 years old. So once they're 18, then they can start withdrawing money, or they can leave it in there. And after that, it just becomes a traditional IRA that could potentially set them up for a large retirement account one day, a long time down the road. So that could be good, right? This The Trump accounts don't go live until July of 2026. And what's kind of cool about the start is that the government is going to be contributing $1,000 per child, per American child, for those born within the years of 2025, 2026, 2027, or 2028. So within those 4 years of Trump's second term, the government's going to put that first $1,000 in there. So that's kind of cool. Even if the parents don't contribute anything and the $1,000 is in there, by the time that kid is 18 years old, the estimation is that account is going to grow to about $6,000 for the kid. So that'd be a super great, starter for a college fund or a car to get to work or whatever, whatever it may be. So that's kind of cool, right? But what are the negatives, right? Okay, so this is it's not obvious until you start thinking about it. But also, I dove into the book of Proverbs. I think this is where, as a Christian parent, I really started to see some red flags. Okay, so here's a positive. Proverbs 13:22. It says, "Good people leave their grandchildren an inheritance, but the wealth of sinners is stored up for the righteous." Okay, so Proverbs is generally speaking. So it's not saying if you want to be a good person, you have to leave an inheritance to your children or your grandchildren. That's not what it's saying. But it's saying, generally speaking, people that manage money in a righteous way, in a godly way, they're going to probably leave an inheritance, right, of some sort. So that's what it's talking about here. So this is a good way for parents to leave an inheritance to their kids, whether they know if they're going to have an inheritance when they pass away or not. This is one way for them to do that. So it is meant to help families start saving and investing for a child's future very early on. I think that's a positive. Could help kids pay for college. That's a positive. Could also set the parents up to save for retirement, because if they're not having to pay for their kids' college at that point, that could be beneficial, right, for them. And some parents do that. My parents were super gracious and generous, and they helped contribute a lot to me to be able to go to college. And I did come out with a little bit of debt out of school, but I'm very gracious to them for that, right? And I know not all parents are able to do that or make that decision. It could also be a positive in that it could teach kids money principles. It could give the parents a good reason to kind of, communicate money principles throughout the years. But here's the concerns. So somebody asked, I have no idea what you're even talking about. Go research Trump accounts for kids. It's a starter IRA for minors. And so the government puts $1,000 into their account. And then, by the time they're 18, it's grown to in some cases, an enormous size potentially. So I want to get into some of the concerns that I have as a Christian parent of 5 kids, because I was thinking, should I do an account like this for my kids? Well, it really depends on how much money you put into the account throughout the years, how much they end up with. So the government estimates if you put in $0 a year after that first $1,000 from the government, it's at 18 years old, they're going to have about $6,000. If you put in about $250 a year, that $6,000 grows to $19,000 by the time they're 18. If you put in up to $5,000 a year, which that's the max, it can grow up to $270,000 by the time your child is 18. Now, most families are not going to be able to afford to put $5,000 in a year, so that would be probably the rare exception. But some families would be able to put $250,000 a year. Their kid could wind up with $20,000 when they're 18, right? So here's some of the problems, some of the concerns. Proverbs 13:11, the ESV says, "Wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it." So some people will say, well, this is wealth gathered little by little, and it's true, but it's gathered by the parents, and it's gathered from the parents' perspective. It's the parents saving in order to hand their kids a huge chunk of change when they become an adult, when they become 18. And some people will say, well, that's a good thing. Yes, in some cases, it would be a really good thing, especially if they turn it around and use it for schooling or something like that. But in some cases, it wouldn't be. I mean, consider for a second a kid turning 18 who doesn't have, a good head on their shoulders yet. Maybe they don't have a good relationship with the Lord. Maybe they don't have money, wisdom, and principles, in their tool belt, and they get handed $270,000. Like, it could be a very disastrous situation. And I'm going to go through some of the reasons why. This is Proverbs 10:4, the CEB. It says, laziness brings poverty, hard work makes one rich. So imagine for a second that a kid is working, maybe a job after school or something. They're working a little, but they know when they turn 18, they're going to get this huge chunk of change. Their desire and motivation to work may decrease because of that, because I just have to wait out until I get my payday, right? My paycheck. Proverbs 12:11, this is CEB. It says, those who work with their land will have plenty to eat, but those who engage in empty pursuits have no sense. So this is not necessarily an empty pursuit, because there is going to be money at the end of the wait, right? But it may not be as much money as that person thinks. Like somebody who's never seen $20,000 in their life or $50,000 in their life might be thinking, as soon as I get that check, I'm set up, right? But then they hit the real world hits and they realize I have to make a rent payment every month, and that 20,000 is only going to last them half a year or whatever, or even 50,000. They're going to burn through it really fast, and they may not be setting themselves up for success in the long run, right? Well, there's a couple other really big issues with this. Another one is a child. Let's say you're a Christian parent and you've got a 16-year-old who doesn't want to obey, right? And you're saying, hey, I need you to, when you're in my house, I need you to follow my rules. I need you to be home by 11 or whatever time. I need you to at least help with the chores. I need you to at least respect this and that. And then they turn around and they say, I don't have to listen to you. In 2 years, I get access to an account with $100,000 in it, and I can leave and do whatever I want. Why would I have to listen to you? Right. And now all of a sudden the child can hold that over the parent's head. And so that could lead to a very disastrous kind of relationship. It could also create a sudden break in the relationship. If at 18, the kid's been, dreading doesn't need the parents anymore. Like, I don't need you. Goodbye. And been dreading like having to obey or whatever. And now they've got this freedom because of the financial freedom to go do whatever they want. It could cause a sudden break in the relationship. And then the other problem is it actually could wind up leading to a situation where the parents they're like spoon feeding the child or spoiling the child, thinking, oh, as soon as they hit, like let's say the parents started out in a good financial situation and they put money into the account every year, and then they lost their jobs or whatever. They're in a worse financial situation, and now they don't have a savings, but there's this account there, and they're thinking, oh, in a year our kid turns 18 and we're going to borrow money from them, right? That could be a very, very damaging to a parent-child relationship. It's not meant to be that way, right? And it could wreak a lot of havoc, or even try to take advantage of them, right? Like, in the sense of like, well, just lend us this money and we'll pay you back, and we're going to do this business, whatever. So it could be super bad, right? A quote from the website, the Trump Accounts website, says, "We're building long-term financial security for millions of children." And I would say, in a sense, you're trying to do that. And I think there's some good benefits to it, but I don't think it's not a promise of long-term financial security. Like, wealth gained hastily will dwindle. Yes, Proverbs 13:11, the parents worked hard for that money, but the kids did not. They didn't feel the blood, sweat, and tears that went into, and the hard work and the dedication that went into making that money. They just got a check, right? And so what does Proverbs say that kind of wealth is going to do? Well, it's going to dwindle. They're not going to treat that money with the same responsibility and respect that they would have if they had actually earned it themselves, or they had actually worked for it themselves. And they may actually end up wasting it a lot faster than the parents would have if it had been under the parents' control. Here's the second concern I have, is that these accounts are not limited to education or positive things. So this is not like there's other funds that allow you to save for your kids' college or education, future education. And I think that's great. But these accounts are not limited to that. So the 18-year-old, now newly adult, gets this large check, whether it be $6,000, $20,000, or $270,000, wherever in between it lies. They get this check or this access to a bank account, and they could literally blow it on partying. So right now I have, kids 3 to 12, right? I've got a good gauge on where my kids are in their relationship with the Lord and their maturity levels, in their habits. But a parent may look at their 3-year-old and go, "You got," and I'm not speaking anything over anyone's 3-year-olds, but you can look at your 3-year-old and go, "Wow, you're such a good kid," right? But people don't know where their kids are going to be when they're 17 or 18, you know? And to put a bunch of investment into them that you have no control over and then they get access to as soon as they turn 18. I mean, what if that kid's going through a rebellious phase? Do you really want to enable a rebellious phase through handing them a huge check, even if you have the money sitting around, right? To put like 5,000 in a year. To me, putting that money not under the adults' supervision anymore or control, but now into the kids' control, I think it is actually a recipe for disaster in some cases. Not every case, but in some cases. And I would say it reminds me of the story of the prodigal son. In Luke chapter 15, he says, "Give me my inheritance," right? And then he goes and he wastes all of it partying and with lavish living and, doing things that are not right. And then he has to come back, right? And it is an amazing story of the grace of God. And God can redeem any situation. Absolutely, 100%. And when the gospel is inserted into the picture, right? The loss of money didn't really matter at the end of the day. What mattered was the redemption of that child. And God can do that no matter where a young person is at. But at the same time, what if that kid had not received the inheritance as soon as he became an adult? What if he had not been given that? It's like, and that was for the sake of the story. But in my mind, it might have been better for that money to stay under the guardianship of the adult for longer before and not given fully to the kid, right? So that they could mature and be able to handle it once it was passed down to them. And so, another quote from the Trump accounts website says they're really getting a big jump on life. And I would say maybe in some cases, but maybe not, because money is not everything. And good character and good relationships and a godly foundation and understanding the word and the gospel and truly making your faith personal in that way, I think is a lot more important for getting a big jump on life than having a large bank account at 18. And so I would encourage, if you're a Christian parent, I would encourage you, if you take advantage of the Trump accounts, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, right? I'm just saying consider some of the conversations that it might be positive to have throughout the years with your child and some of the ways that it may be better to, put some money into that account. It may be better to put some into another account or something like that if you have that money to save, right? But also, how are you training your child to react to money, or are you teaching them the money principles out of the word, and that kind of thing? I think they're good questions to ask. It's something I'm asking myself as some of my kids are getting older. They're preteen. My oldest kid is 12. She's going to be a teenager soon, and I'm having to ask some of those questions because she's going to want to have a job or do this or that, and she wants to spend more money, and so am I teaching her and my kids these principles too? I think it's a great question to ask. So those are my concerns. Y'all let me know what you think. Are you for, against, and where in the middle do you land? And what are some concerns that I didn't think about, or maybe some positives I didn't think about? Y'all let me know what you think about it. So there's my response. Let me know what you think about this video in general as well. And I will see y'all